Hi everyone, this is Devendra from Code Igniter. So today in my session we will learn about SOA, Service Oriented Architecture. What is exactly Service Oriented Architecture? Why we are using Service Oriented Architecture? What are the benefit of the Service Oriented Architecture? We will see in this topic. So before this, I will let you introduce about what exactly Service Oriented Architecture. So, introduction to service-oriented architecture, as my first point indicate, SOA stand for service-oriented architecture. The term SOA define how to maintain communication between two heterogeneous software. The term heterogeneous refer to the software written in different languages. So let me explain about this. So SOA is nothing but a term. Service-oriented architecture is a term mainly used to define how we can communication between two heterogeneous architecture. Heterogeneous architecture in the sense it's depend upon different platform, different OS, different platform, two different applications, how they could communicate to each other. That's define the heterogeneous. That is called heterogeneous. And SOA define how we can communicate with these two different softwares because different softwares have a different they have a different platform, they have different processor, they are made up with different programming language. So communication between two things is quite impossible. So the main thing how we can communicate is we need to communicate with some medium which can understood both the languages, both application languages. So how does this communication takes place from step 1 to step 5 or 6 up to the destination? So that exactly service oriented architecture define. So while we are working with this service oriented architecture, it provides a set of elements to create an environment for communication. So mainly service oriented architecture give a environment, gives a workplace where we can use to communicate between help us to communicate between two things, um, two heterogeneous software. So what are the elements, what are the component in this service oriented architecture SOA involves, and how the communication takes place? So definitely we have a consumer software and a producer software. And note that this consumer software and producer software are of different platform. Okay, different platform, and a medium which will transfer data between these two things. So that's the service a formal introduction about this service oriented architecture. So next thing, what is a, as we know that we have a, like in that environment we have a, like a consumer and a producer and a medium to the transfer, which transferring the data from the consumer to the consumer to the producer, or producer to the consumer. So let's exactly see what is a consumer, what is a producer, and what are the different environment setup we have set up for this communication. So producer, a producer is a software where a certain business logics are exposed to the outside world. Okay, so producer, as we know, producer is something which will produce something which will have a business logic inside it, and that business logic need to be understood by other application, which is a consumer. Okay, so here this diagram fully explain you what exactly the service oriented architecture. So we have a service provider which will provide service. These are individual services. So individual services, like I need to book my ticket. Okay, so for these things I have written a function, so that functions or that APIs are called a service. So I need a registration, people who's coming to my site will register. So for that I have written a services, so this is called a separate services. So let's we consider this as a service provider and it is a service one. So this is a service consumer. Service consumer means whatever services are there in software one, this software two wants to communicate, want to use these services. So that's why it is called software communication, service communication, consumer. So the obviously the consumer will request a give a request for the services, and the services whatever the business logic inside it, and that these things will come to this. By default these communications, mainly there are two types of communications. there is a medium through which the communication takes place. We'll see the latter what are the different communications. So using SOA, we can implement two types of services. So there are two types of services which could be possibly done in SOA. So these are called SOAP and REST. So what is SOAP and REST? So before going deep into SOAP and REST, let's give some time to know about the history of SOAP and REST. So the first SOA programming tool was Corba. In October 1991, it was released. Common Object Request Broker architecture, an architecture that enable pieces of program called objects to communicate with another object. So these are all means of like cross-platform communications. Then after that, we have a Microsoft developed COM in 1993. So Microsoft COM, component object model, is a technology in Microsoft Windows family or operating system enable software component to communicate. So like that, after that in 1995, Microsoft Dcom. Then we have .NET remoting in 2000. So again we have like 2005 web services, and then in 2007 2008 we have a WCF, and now we have 2012 we have like web API. So these are mainly these are the history when we are coming from that com decom to web API. So we have lot of things in our field. So currently we are using WCF. So in our next tutorial, we'll see how web API, how what is the difference between these things like web services, WCF, and web API, and we'll go ahead on that. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe our channel codeignite.com.